This hearing is called to order. Delegate Jaliga, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Well, on behalf of the Pennsylvania House Republican Policy Committee, I want to thank you all for joining us for this first of its kind multi-state policy hearing on reliable energy and affordability. I'm David Rowe. I have the privilege of representing the 85th Legislative District that includes Union, Snyder, Juniata, and Mifflin counties. I'm also privileged to be joined not only by several of our colleagues here in Pennsylvania, but also delegates from Maryland, New Jersey, and also online by a delegate from Virginia. We're going to start off by giving members a chance to introduce themselves, and then we're going to kick things over to some delegate leads. So we're going to start right here at the other end to Secretary Owlett. Name, district, all the way around. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Clint Owlett, I serve Tioga and half of Bradford County, 68th Legislative District.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mark Fisher. I represent Delegate 27B in Calvert County, Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate Ryan Naraki. I represent Baltimore County in Maryland.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for having this meeting. I'm Delegate Kathy Shalega from Baltimore County, Maryland. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Delegate Lauren Arkin, District 7B, Harford County, Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Robin Grammer, District 6, Baltimore County.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate Brian Chisholm, District 31, Anne Arundel County, Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Dawn Fantasia. I represent New Jersey's 24th Legislative District, Sussex, Morris, and Warren counties.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Greg Meyer, New Jersey's 9th Legislative District, Ocean County.
Great to be here today, Mr. Chairman. Paul Knitra. I represent the 10th District, Monmouth and Ocean counties in New Jersey.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this hearing. My name is John DeMayo. I am the Assembly Republican leader in the House, and I represent Warren, Hunterdon, and Somerset counties, part of.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kristen Marcel, 178th District from Bucks County.
Good morning, Representative Marty Causer. I represent the 67th Legislative District in McKean, Potter, and Cameron counties and serve as Republican chair of the House Energy Committee.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here. Representative Jim Struzzi, representing Indiana County, the 62nd Legislative District, also the House Republican Appropriations Chairman.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Pennsylvania. I'm State Representative Martina White. I am from Philadelphia, the far northeast section of the city, and I serve as the House Republican Caucus Chairwoman.
Good morning. My name is Roman Kozak. I represent Beaver County, just north of Pittsburgh. It's the 14th Legislative District.
Hi, Representative Tim O'Neill. I represent the 48th Legislative District, which is Washington County, just south of Pittsburgh, and I serve as the caucus whip, the Republican whip.
Good morning. I'm Representative Jamie Barton. I serve the 124th Legislative District, serving Schuylkill and Berks counties.
Good morning. Joe Diorsi. I represent the 47th Legislative District, which is in York County.
Good morning. I'm Barb Gleim from the 199th District in Cumberland County, and I spent my high school years in Howard County, Maryland.
Hey. Well, hello, everybody. Perry Stambaugh, 86th Legislative District, all of Perry and most of Juniata County, just northwest across the river.
Good morning, everybody. Brenda Pugh, 120th District, located in Luzerne County.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Jill Cooper. I represent the 55th District, which is Westmoreland County. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having the event.
Thank you. I also want to recognize we have some members on the outer perimeter of our seating area here. Obviously, it was a tight fit. We had overwhelming interest in this hearing, which is a great thing. But I want to thank Representative Shoren, Representatives Borowitz, Representative Walsh, Representative Banta, Representative Krupa, Representative Jones for being here as well, and Representative Ledbetter for coming as well, Representative Doyle Heffley. And if there's other members over there, I can't see you because the light's too bright. But thank you very much, everybody, for being here today. I also want to reference that we also... Oh, yes. If members want, we have seats all around, please. We've also been joined by Chairman Representative Brian Cutler. Thank you very much. Yes, seats are available on the perimeter if you'd like to. Representative Marla Brown, thank you very much. I also want to reference that we do have congressional interest in this hearing, which is very exciting. We have Aidan Shanley from Senator McCormick's office, and we have Mark Brown from Congressman Andy Harris's office here with us today as well. Also want to mention we have been joined by Representative Mike Armanini. We're going to kick things off by letting some of our members from our visiting state speak today. I'm going to start off with Assemblyman Conitra from New Jersey.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everybody. New Jersey comes to this hearing today in the midst of a crushing energy crisis that is skyrocketing prices and leaving us vulnerable to future brownouts and blackouts. This position of utter weakness is directly the result of 8 years of ideological and foolhardy spending and decisions coming from Governor Murphy and Democrat leadership in our state legislature. Their insane choices destroyed the energy independence we enjoyed less than a decade ago. They demonized fossil fuels and tried to destroy our oceans by subsidizing international corporations' offshore wind pursuits. Now, our residents will wake up on November 1st to a 20% increase in their utility bills and additional deferred costs because of an utterly disgusting scheme to try and hide the truth from them during early voting. If Governor Shapiro's threats to leave the interstate grid actually ever come to fruition, our state could literally be plunged into darkness. We may be in a crisis never seen before, but we are here today to fight back. Our Minority Leader, John DeMeo, who is joining us today, spearheaded the formation of an energy task force to come up with common sense plans to save New Jersey residents. Assemblywoman Dawn Fantasia from the task force is also here today. And finally, Assemblyman Greg Meyer joins us after fighting for years against the offshore wind debacle in his district. I'd like to briefly turn things over to our Minority Leader, John DeMeo. We're so grateful he's here today. Leader.
Well, thank you, Assemblyman. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Briefly, this is our report from this committee I formed on the Republican side to deal with this issue, which I'll just take some of the highlights. First thing, leave Reggie. That'll immediately save money on the bill. Do away with societal benefit charges. That's 3% on the bill. And take off the sales tax, which is another 6+% on the bill, so we can give immediate relief to our ratepayers. And then as quickly as possible, and I talked to the Speaker recently, get some gas generation going in the next few years to start restoring our place to help the region, not only ourselves. Thank God for Pennsylvania and other states that can export to give to us, or we would be in darkness. We're expecting brownouts this coming summer. So glad to be here, and that's my input for now. Thank you.
From Maryland, Delegate Chisholm.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of myself and the other representatives from the state of Maryland, we just want to say thank you for giving us a seat at the table as we all face this energy crisis that's looming. Unfortunately, in the state of Maryland, our energy policy has basically been hijacked by climate extremists, by political elites, and special interest groups that have all but abandoned any common sense or any basic principles of supply and demand, all in the name of some Greek goddess of energy. This blind push has, of one-size-fits-all energy policy in the state of Maryland, has already forced 5 power plants to shut down. That's 3,200 megawatts. That's 2 million homes every single day, 2 million Xboxes and grandma's scooter. That does not include, and I know you guys know about Brandon Shores and Wagner, who recently got a stay of execution. That's additional 2,000 megawatts. When FERC looked at it, they said if you shut down these 2 plants, you're going to have a catastrophic events on your hand, the likes of we've never seen in this country. There'll be rolling blackouts, not just in our area, but throughout the grid. So luckily, FERC stepped in for that. Our families and our friends and our small businesses cannot afford this reckless agenda of this green energy push, of skyrocketing energy bills that are crushing Marylanders. And this idea that we should just solely depend on intermittent wind and solar is absurd, and it defies all logic. but they're so determined to force it down our throats. It reminds me of the little purple girl from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory who's stomping her feet and demanding, I want the everlasting gobstopper, no matter what, no matter how much negativity comes out of it. That's all they want to push, and we are just delighted to be here so that we can collaborate with our neighboring states, because we know we're in this together, and find some common some common solutions that's going to help all of us on the grid. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate. I'm going to turn things over to Delegate Webert from Virginia, who is also the whip of their caucus. Delegate Webert, can you hear us?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Excellent. Well, thank you for allowing me to join virtually, because unfortunately in Virginia they called a special session, took our Republican candidate off the campaign trail while your governor is down here campaigning for the other side. He should probably be up there trying to get a budget through. But to be honest, it's one of those things where, first of all, I'd like to thank Pennsylvania and West Virginia for all the energy that they provide the Commonwealth of Virginia. We import 38% of our energy, and our energy use has skyrocketed. Unfortunately, the Commonwealth of Virginia passed the Clean Economy Act, which in 2040 mandates that all of our carbon production be dismantled, and that we go strictly to solar and wind without any other energy coming on board. And we're saying that we need nuclear, we need natural gas, we need clean natural gas in order to do that. And unfortunately, our energy needs have put a massive burden on the grid. So I am actually very grateful, David, that you put this together, and that all the legislators are coming together to work on this. Because to be honest, the gentleman from Maryland was talking about plants that come offline, and sitting right across the river, we can actually stare at plants that are coming offline that could provide energy not only for Maryland, but for the Commonwealth of Virginia, and it's a very short tranche from across the river. So I look forward to seeing what goes on today, but looking forward to working with all my colleagues in the future. Because this, particularly with the PJM grid, needs to truly be a regional effort. So thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to future conversation.
Thank you, Whip Webert. I appreciate that, and thank you for taking the time to be here. So just to summarize why we're here today, this hearing continues a conversation we've had throughout the year, as our members well know, on confronting rising electricity costs, regulatory bottlenecks, and the growing threat of power shortages during peak demand. Families, businesses, and communities across Pennsylvania, Maryland, New Jersey, and Virginia are all feeling the same pressure. We share the same regional grid, the same transmission lines, and the same responsibility to keep the lights on. And today we are demonstrating a commitment to achieve common sense energy policy grounded in reliability and affordability. But as the data continues to point towards tightening reliability margins, with PJM highlighting growing constraints and capacity costs climbing, the policy response has too often been symbolic rather than substantive. And that's why we've convened here, to move beyond symbolism and toward coordinated real-world solutions. Just last month, the governors of the PJM states gathered in Philadelphia for what was billed as a historic summit, where Governor Shapiro said, and I quote, "This slow, reactive approach is no longer working for our states and the communities we serve, and it's all happening at a time when the Trump administration is cutting funding for new energy projects that are almost complete," end quote. But the reality is this: Pennsylvania does not have a funding problem. It is a permitting problem. It has a policy problem. There is no shortage of interest in investment opportunities in energy. Case in point, look to Alaska, that just signed a $44 billion liquid natural gas deal with Tokyo Gas. Look at Louisiana, that signed a $17.5 billion deal with Woodside Energy. The barrier to new generation isn't in Washington, it's in action at the state level. So while Governor Shapiro is campaigning for energy affordability in other states, the grid that powers them all is faltering right here at home. So together, Pennsylvania, Maryland, New Jersey, and Virginia, we're taking action. We are propelled by the same spirit of interdependence that built the PJM system itself. And that spirit must guide us again towards permitting reform, modernized transmission planning, and policies that keep reliability and affordability at the center of innovation and growth. The Mid-Atlantic, represented here today, is ready to lead with practical, balanced solutions that will keep energy affordable and dependable for generations to come. One of the case studies that I love to reference, and I know our members have heard me reference it before, but it was Governor Asa Hutchinson who famously said that you will build and open your business in Arkansas before it will be permitted in Pennsylvania. And that was the case. Just a couple of weeks ago, I met with some individuals who told us that a $12 billion investment was looking to come to Pennsylvania. And when they met with our governor, the governor said, well, we're happy to talk you through the permitting process. When they went to Texas the next week, the governor said, when do you want to break ground? And that is the difference in an operational ideology that we see here, and it is exactly what we are going to tackle. So today, we have 5 excellent testifiers that I want to thank you all for joining us. We have Stephen Bennett, who is the Senior Manager of Regulatory and Legislative Affairs at PJM Interconnection. We have Mr. Rob Jennings, who is the Vice President of Natural Gas Markets for the American Petroleum Institute. We have Ms. Rachel Gleason, who's the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Coal Alliance. We have Ms. Maddie Milam, the Executive Director of the Midwest Consumer Energy Alliance. And we have Ms. Elizabeth Stell, the Vice President of Policy for the Commonwealth Foundation. Members, also in your packets, you will find we have quite a bit of written testimony from the PA Chamber, from the Manufacturers Association, from PP&L, from Reliability First, from America First Policy Institute, and others. Testifiers, we're going to give you guys about 3 minutes each, which I know is not a long time, but we'll have plenty of times for Q&A, and after that, we will be taking questions from the representatives. Mr. Bennett, you're up first.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Members of the committee, visiting members from Maryland, New Jersey, and Virginia, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I think this is my 3rd time appearing before the Policy Committee, but certainly the first opportunity I've had to address a joint hearing with Mid-Atlantic states, all of which served by PJM. Very quickly, I want to say that I was born and raised in Maryland and went to the University of Maryland at College Park. Shortly thereafter, I moved to beautiful Old Town Alexandria, Virginia, where I had the opportunity to spend much of my disposable income as a young professional until I met a wonderful woman from New Jersey and then married her and moved to New Jersey. Now I live in Pennsylvania. I've been here for 20 years, and I have been, so yeah, I hit them all. And well, I saw the applause Howard County got for high school. I thought, why not? And now I am assigned to the states of Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Illinois for my professional duties. PJM is a RTO, a regional transmission organization. That means we are a federally regulated, not-for-profit organization that is focused entirely on the reliability of the bulk power grid. Neither I, any of my colleagues, our executive team, our board, are allowed to own stock or financial interests in any of our members or any of the assets that make up the bulk power system. We do not have a financial interest in what happens other than we want to keep the lights on at in the most cost-effective manner as possible. We serve over 67 million people across some or all of 13 states and the District of Columbia, and all the states represented here today are full state members of PJM. Our mission, again, is reliability. It is our North Star. It is our guiding light. In service to that mission, in 2023, PJM authored a paper called, and I always forget because we call it the 4R paper, but it is Resource, Retirements, Replacements, and Risks. And in that paper, we discussed 4 burgeoning trends that we saw that in aggregate had the potential to create challenges and in fact imperil the resource adequacy and capacity that had served PJM very well for a number of decades. Those 4 trends were an increase in electricity usage, at the time data centers, but quite frankly not at the level that we are currently experiencing, beneficial electrification and onshoring of manufacturing we saw as increasing in demand and electricity usage. We also saw an increase in generation units that were retiring due to federal and state policy. The units that were coming on to replace those retirements, we saw 2 challenges. One, they were not coming on fast enough. Some of that was due to PJM's interconnection queue, but some of that was the fact that we just weren't seeing the commercial operation of generators even after they passed through the PJM interconnection queue. In addition, many of the technologies for the replacement generation were accredited at lower values than the generators they were replacing. When I say accreditation, what I mean is for PJM's capacity market, PJM assigns an accreditation value for generators based on the probability that they will be available to us and to the system when they are needed most. That is usually the hottest day of the summer and or the coldest night of the winter. Together, again, in aggregate, those trends pointed to the potential for the endangerment of our reserve margins. And our reserve margins are, in our capacity market, the need to maintain not just enough iron in the ground to meet load, but also a certain amount above, because we know our forecasts and what we see in the coming years is not going to match exactly with our forecasts. Today, we see those challenges increasing markedly, especially around load forecasts and the load growth that we were seeing, not just in the Mid-Atlantic or PJM, but across the country and really the globe. The rise of generative AI and the forecast for hyperscaler development within our footprint is creating significant increases in our load forecasts. Our load forecasts since 2023 have increased each year, and they will continue to increase significantly into next year. We are seeing some slowdown in the retirement of units due to policy. Some of that is recently through some changes in policy approach with the Trump administration. We're also seeing the rescinding and postponement of retirements due to price signals coming from the PJM markets, and we're even seeing nuclear plants that had retired in a time of more generation availability coming back online, both because of PJM market signals and because of revenue that's coming from the data center industry. We're also seeing the accreditation values go up slightly. Some of that is because PJM had a reliability resource initiative, which was an effort to bring units that had a higher accreditation value, a larger capacity contribution, come online faster. But we are still seeing the overall replacement of new generation coming in at what we predicted to be the worst case scenario velocity in our paper in 2023. So there are some positive changes, but we're seeing challenges, again, especially with the online commercialization of replacement generation and certainly with the load forecasts. All of those things, again, in aggregate are daunting challenges. PJM, I want to be clear, we are not predicting any kind of blackouts today or in the very near future. However, together, these trends, without a significant course correction, could result in, for the first time in PJM's history, an actual deficit in resource adequacy. And that could happen in 2030 or possibly even sooner. PJM is working very diligently internally with our members and with our state partners to try to effectuate this course correction. We need to get our arms around the load forecasts. We need to make sure that they are as accurate as possible. We need to make sure that the data center industry is invested in their ability to come online and pay for the infrastructure necessary to support them. We need to make sure that we get as much generation of all types online as fast as possible. Together, we are hopeful that, again, in a collaborative environment where we are solutions focused, we can rise to the challenge. Because if artificial intelligence remains an important factor in the United States economy and our national security, we need to meet this moment and we need to meet it together. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Mr. Jennings.
Boy, I wish I had a story like Steven's to make you guys like me from the outset, but hopefully we can hopefully we can bond over our shared affinity for reliable energy. So thank you, Chairman Rowe, members of the Pennsylvania House Republican Policy Committee, and visiting policymakers from our neighboring states. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today regarding the challenges and opportunities facing the region's energy sector. The American Petroleum Institute is the national trade association representing all segments of America's natural gas and oil industry, which supports more than 10 million U.S. jobs and is backed by a growing grassroots movement of millions of Americans. Our nearly 600 members produce, process, and distribute most of the nation's energy. Collectively, the industry contributes nearly $1.8 trillion to U.S. GDP, close to 8% of the entire economy. We often refer to this as the first 8% because we all know that without energy, nothing else moves. Here in Pennsylvania, the industry proudly supports 400,000 jobs and contributes $40 billion to the local economy each year. The Keystone State is a great symbol of America's shale revolution, the scale of which remains striking. Just 15 years ago, Pennsylvania produced less than 2 billion cubic feet per day of natural gas. Today, it produces more than 20 billion cubic feet per day, a surge that has helped take America from a position of scarcity and dependence to one of abundance and global leadership. API commends the House Republican Policy Committee for convening this hearing to explore how to best address the challenges and opportunities facing the region's energy sector. Energy is the backbone of our economy, and with demand rising, it's critical for us to have timely and candid conversations about how our industry can work with policymakers to ensure that Americans continue to have access to the affordable, reliable energy they need. Today, many of the challenges we face in the Mid-Atlantic mirror those in other parts of the country. Residential electric utility bills have risen far faster than inflation in recent years, and while some of the drivers are unavoidable, others have been self-inflicted. Between 2010 and 2020, gas-fired generating capacity in Pennsylvania and the rest of PJM surged as utilities and independent power producers responded to a tightening regional electricity market and capitalized on abundant natural gas from the Marcellus Shale Basin. However, gas plant development has slowed significantly in recent years for a variety of policy and market-related reasons. While the impact of the slowdown wasn't immediately felt, that changed quickly amid forecasts of rapidly rising electricity demand, which are being driven by a combination of a boom in manufacturing, innovations in artificial intelligence, and the broader electrification of the economy. In its latest long-term demand outlook, PJM forecasts that overall electricity demand across its footprint could jump nearly 60% over the next decade. This growth is staggering, but rising demand for power shouldn't be something to fear. It's an indication of job creation and a thriving economy, and it's imperative that we rise to the challenge. API believes natural gas will continue to play an outsized role, and that Pennsylvania, with its abundant natural resources, is in an enviable position to meet the moment. But one challenge lurks ahead. There's no question about supply, we have it. There's no question about demand, it's there. The question is whether we can connect the two. Can we build the infrastructure necessary to move energy from where it's produced to where it's used? That is the permitting challenge, and unfortunately, the processes are fundamentally broken. We must enact meaningful permitting reforms to state and federal permitting processes that allow for the timely build-out of infrastructure, from pipelines and transmission lines to natural gas storage and power plants, needed to help ensure a reliable and resilient grid. Today, projects languish in years of duplicative reviews or endless litigation. A pipeline that should take less than a year to permit can stretch to a decade. That delay doesn't just stall private investment, it delays affordable energy for consumers and the reliable energy supply Americans count on. The bottom line is this. Everything is pointing to the fact that we need more energy, not less, and we urge policymakers to prioritize policies that make it easier to build energy infrastructure, especially power generating capacity, and bring affordable, reliable energy to consumers. We appreciate the opportunity to testify today, and API remains committed to working with the Pennsylvania State Legislature, as well as those of the other states represented here today, on pragmatic solutions to meeting rising demand. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Jennings. Director Gleason.
Chairman Rowe, members of the House Republican Policy Committee, New Jersey General Assembly, and the Maryland and Virginia House delegates, I am Rachel Gleason, Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Coal Alliance. I will try and be brief. During the summer of 2019, Jim Robb, the president and CEO of the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, said that when most engineers look at the Texas grid, they conclude that there's no way in hell they can keep the lights on, and yet they do. Speaking in front of FERC, Robb also commented on his amazement at how California was managing to keep the lights on despite immensely challenging circumstances. Those remarks have since proved painfully observant, as both states have experienced blackouts, leaving millions of residents in the dark. Despite years of warnings, the reality we now face is that the threats to reliability have only grown more acute. Exactly 1 week ago, Robb said at a FERC grid reliability conference that the state of the nation's grid reliability is a 5-alarm fire. Concern over grid reliability and moreover resource adequacy is not a new topic. Warnings across the nation and in the PJM RTO have been voiced for years, yet the red flags have largely been ignored. These warnings have been fueled by policies that have subsidized intermittent energy sources at the expense of reliable, dispatchable sources like coal-fired generation, leading to premature plant retirements, and have been exacerbated by rapid load growth from electrification initiatives across sectors. What we didn't know several years ago was the rapid rise of advanced artificial intelligence and the unfettered growth of data centers, which has intensified an existing reliability problem and fast-tracked an electricity affordability crisis. In February of 2023, I testified in front of this committee on this exact topic in the wake of Winter Storm Elliott, when Keystone and Conemaugh generating stations in Armstrong and Indiana counties once again saved the grid. Combined, these two powerhouses represent 3.4 gigawatts of reliable and resilient power that operated without fail during the storm. Coal's ability to provide baseload power is unmatched by any other fuel source in affordability, flexibility, reliability, resiliency, and security. PJM gives an effective load carrying capability, an ELCC, or reliability contribution, of 83% to coal, ranking behind nuclear and diesel utility as a generation source. Fast forward to 6 p.m. on June 23, 2025, when many of you were in this building. Electricity demand rose to one of the highest levels in PJM in the past decade, surging by nearly 70% to exceed 160 gigawatts. During that time, coal-fired generation more than doubled in PJM, increasing from 14.5 gigawatts to 31 gigawatts, and also exhibited the most pronounced increase when its capacity factor rose from 40% during the week of June 8th to 81% during that peak day. A critical portion, 14 gigawatts of that coal fleet that prevented blackouts during Winter Storm Elliott and the heat wave in June, is slated for retirement before 2030, largely due to regulatory policy and pressures. Had that 14 gigawatts of coal-fired generation not been available when demand surged during those extreme events, the remaining units available would not have been able to match the generation needed. Coal-fired generation once again proved indispensable by ramping output under stress conditions and preventing widespread blackouts. PJM needs more power, long-duration, dispatchable capacity power, because you can't run a reliable and resilient grid based on the weather. As such, we're in a period of energy addition, but adding new, reliable, dispatchable capacity takes time and is proving to be an immense challenge. Data centers are swallowing new turbine orders, and prices for turbines are soaring with the supply chain struggling to keep up. Just last week, the GE Vernova CEO commented that an analyst estimate of a U.S. turbine cost at $2,500 a kilowatt is a practical illustration of where the market is today. Adding to the challenges, expanding pipeline infrastructure at the speed and scale that is needed is a tall order at best, and the potential deployment of nuclear power is not a practical near-term answer to the grid's demands. Considering this, maintaining the existing coal fleet isn't just a reliability imperative, it is a necessity. Keeping all of the available capacity we need online rather than prematurely shuttering it will be essential for energy security, grid reliability, and mitigating the price pressures that will otherwise continue to escalate for ratepayers. Coal generation is already taking market share and serving as a price shock absorber for consumers. At the most recent 2026-2027 capacity auction, coal-fired generation was the second largest source of generating capacity to clear the auction, demonstrating its competitive and important role in both reliability and affordability. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I will welcome any questions.
Thank you, Director Gleason. Director Milam.
Chairman Rowe, members of the committee, and representatives, thank you for the opportunity to testify today on behalf of Consumer Energy Alliance and the families, farmers, small businesses, distributors, producers, and manufacturers that we represent across the Mid-Atlantic and the broader United States. CEA's mission is simple: work to ensure that consumers have a voice in energy policymaking so they can access affordable, reliable, and cleaner energy. For the millions living across the PJM region, energy affordability and reliability aren't political talking points. They determine whether homes stay warm, schools stay open, and local economies keep running. Across the Mid-Atlantic, electricity prices are climbing. Dispatchable generation is retiring faster than replacements can be built. And our grid is increasingly strained by policy uncertainty, permitting delays, and rising demand from AI, data centers, and electrification. NERC has repeatedly warned that policy decisions prematurely retiring functioning power plants are hurting reliability. Meanwhile, PJM's own analysis shows that more than 30 gigawatts of firm generation, enough to power 25 million homes, are planned to close by 2030, even as peak demand keeps rising. In recent PJM capacity auctions, prices have spiked tenfold, adding well over $10 billion in cost to consumers without proportional new supply. The result is a grid operating under elevated risk, a product of policy failure and public policy choices that have made it increasingly difficult to build the generation we need. The shortage of generation in PJM is a little bit like an infection. In PJM states where policy halt or delay projects through moratoria, permitting delay, or arbitrary bans. When states prohibit natural gas infrastructure, prematurely retire nuclear plants, or subject renewables to year-long reviews, they constrain supply, drive up cost, and shift reliability risk onto neighboring states. The result is a patchwork of incompatible state mandates that distort regional markets that undermine the very reliability those markets were designed to ensure. All parties, states, PJM, and stakeholders must consider reasonable, appropriate ways to get generation built to meet system challenges and serve customers. Oversight by state regulators remains central, but PJM processes must be flexible enough to accommodate different procurement options and outcomes with adverse effects on consumers. States cannot demand reliability while denying the generation necessary to provide it, all in the name of hitting an arbitrary year to get X amount of power from carbon-free resources. This is all about energy realism, grounding our decisions in what actually works for families, farmers, and small businesses who depend on affordable, reliable power to thrive. At CEA, we believe the path forward for the Mid-Atlantic can be both pro-consumer and pro-environment if guided by a few key principles: energy realism and diversity through an all-of-the-above approach, permitting reform and infrastructure investment, transmission expansion and market transparency, public education and honest dialogue. And thank y'all for hosting this honest dialogue. The energy evolution cannot leave consumers behind. As we integrate new technologies to respond to projected growth, states that manage that growth with the reliable, affordable supply will attract jobs, investment, and innovation. In closing, restoring energy affordability and reliability in the Mid-Atlantic isn't about returning to the past. It's about creating the conditions that would create growth, investment, and energy security moving forward. Chairman Rowe and members, thank you for your leadership in hosting this meeting. We stand ready to work with you and your colleagues in industry and everyone at this table to find a pathway forward. Thank you. Look forward to the questions.
Thank you, Director Milam. I want to mention that we have been joined by Administrator DeLozer, Representative Miller, and Representative Ham. Vice President Stell.
Thank you, Chairman Rowe. Thank you, all the Pennsylvania lawmakers and all of the lawmakers from neighboring states. It's a pleasure to be with you today. My name is Elizabeth Stell. I'm the Vice President of Policy from the Commonwealth Foundation. We are Pennsylvania's free market think tank. We work on policies to help all Pennsylvanians thrive. Energy is at the center of that conversation right now in Pennsylvania. I want to note a couple of things. I'm going to be very brief given I'm at the end of the panel. But I want to talk a little bit about the past and what we can learn from the past as we look to the future. Pennsylvania does have a pretty good track record of affordable, reliable energy, and that's not a mistake. That is due from some of the policies that were put in place 10, 20, even 30 years ago. So I want to draw your attention to the average retail cost of energy in Pennsylvania as recorded by the EIA. If you look all the way back to 2003, you will see that the average retail price of electricity for all consumers in Pennsylvania was 8.02 cents per kilowatt hour. Fast forward to 2023, we're up to 12.5 cents per kilowatt hour. An increase, but still just below the national average. If you jump to our neighbor, New Jersey, you'll see a different story. Rates there soared from 9.48 cents per kilowatt hour in 2003 to 15.27 cents per kilowatt hour in 2023. So far above. And what's driving that? There are a lot of factors, but the one I want to focus on today is really, I think, summed up by that post over there, the no Reggie, no Pacer, no press. And I would add to that, no AEPS. That is our renewable portfolio standard here in Pennsylvania. These state policies do matter. You can see that in the numbers I just quoted. You can see that in many other numbers. And I would note that if you look at the 10 most expensive states for power and the 10 cheapest states for power, what you find is 7 of those 10 states are in RGGI. All of those states have some form of a renewable portfolio standard. So these state policies that you are considering as lawmakers really do matter. And we need to do more than just talk about, what's gone wrong. We need to talk about what we can do to move forward. And that includes, yes, fighting the bad policies that are on the horizon in Pennsylvania, like RGGI, but also looking at correcting mistakes from the past. So I opened up my electricity bill, and I said, okay, what's in here that shouldn't be in here? What's contributing to the increase that everyday Pennsylvanians, consumers in all of our states are facing? And I did a little bit of deep digging, and I came up with a couple of things that should be on the table when we're discussing how to make rates more affordable again. The hidden government mandates, universal service program, worth looking at. Act 129, energy efficiency programs. I have a solar requirement charge to comply with the alternative energy portfolio standards on my bill. And then, of course, our gross receipts tax. These are all things we should be talking about as we're looking to make power more affordable in Pennsylvania. But it's not just that. It's also really important to point out that Pennsylvania is doing better in terms of reducing carbon emissions than states that are in RGGI. So we can do both. And that's an important point to make. And then the last thing I want to talk about are things like load forecasting, things like permitting reform. Yes, we always talk about permitting reform. There is a bill right now, recently introduced in the House Bill, I think it was 1924, to get a better handle around rates, the forecasts, that are being proposed. That's great. That's what our neighbors Ohio did. Ohio also did something called House Bill 15 last spring that reaffirmed its commitment to a competitive, innovative marketplace. Competitive markets are how we got to reliable, relatively stable electricity costs in Pennsylvania, and that's how we will continue to have those in Pennsylvania. So what I love about that bill especially is that they ended subsidies and they encouraged new energy production by lowering taxes, not by special tax credits or corporate welfare handouts. That's really critical. So we have lots of tools in our toolbox. Collaboration with PJM, with neighboring states is highly needed, and it's wonderful to see a collaboration this morning. So I'll leave it at that. Looking forward to the questions, and thank you again for convening this meeting.
Thank you very much, Vice President Stell. And I think right there towards the end, you highlighted, I think, what is my favorite data.
That is a concern because, again, we believe at PJM the focus needs to be on the problems and the solutions to the problems. However, we also exist to serve the people that live in our footprint. We exist to provide value. In the past, we've done assessments that show that we bring well over several $1 billion worth of value to our footprint. And a lot of that's because of geographic scale and diversity. So it is right and proper for a state to say, is that value still there? Should we remain a member of PJM? Do my constituents still benefit by billions of dollars for being a member of PJM? We believe that's the case, and we're in the process of creating a new value proposition to show how much money, how much value is brought to the residents of PJM. I see the red lights on. I'll say, we believe if the question is Pennsylvania better served by being a member of PJM, that we're up to the task, and the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Assemblywoman Fantasia.
To start, Maddie, you have the quote of the day, I think, thus far. States cannot demand reliability while denying the ability to generate and supply it. I think that sums up the entire purpose of why any of us are here. So across the Mid-Atlantic, Democrat energy policy is collapsing. Obviously, that brought us here. In New Jersey, we have a governor who bet everything on offshore wind and green energy fantasies and left us with absolutely nothing. Unfortunately for our Maryland friends, New Jersey wins the prize. Our governor took 6 power plants off, not 5. So we proudly wave that banner. So Pennsylvania here is sitting on somewhat of a gold mine that's just not being accessed from our understanding. And now in New Jersey, we have a congresswoman who's actually touting solar as the solution. And by PJM's estimation, when our group met with PJM, we were told that based upon reliability, solar has an 8% reliability rate. So that means for every dollar that we put in towards that, 92 cents could potentially go in the ether. It has an 8% reliability rate. So my question is, we have politics and green energy chasing windmill fantasies replacing reality. We have ideology supplanting fact. So when realistically are we looking at A, brownouts, blackouts in a state like New Jersey? Because when we met with PJM, we were told next summer we would begin experiencing that on this trajectory. And 2, knowing that wind went the way of the dodo, thank God, in the state of New Jersey, knowing that solar has an 8% reliability rate, which our Democrats are hanging their hat on, what is the likelihood of bringing gas up quickly through the queue, through the bottlenecked queue that we're always told? Our Democrats demonize PJM all the time. They don't just throw you under the bus. They drive the bus over you and back it up and drive it again. That's what's happening. So give us some insight into that piece, please.
Thank you for the question. A couple things. I'll say, well, I'll start with the interconnection queue. Without question, there was a period of time where the PJM interconnection queue was not working anymore. It had worked for a number of years for kind of the older paradigm when we had a couple, less than 200 projects a year seeking interconnection to the grid. With the clean energy expansion, we saw those numbers jump into the hundreds and then into the thousands. And our queue was not designed for that. Now, I think what is often omitted from the criticism of the queue is that in 2022, we recognized the mismatch of design and reality and started a reform process where we worked very quickly on a utility basis, very quickly with our members, very quickly with FERC, our regulator, to put in a new process and a transition process where we would work through the backlog that had developed and then have a much faster process on the other end. I'm very happy to report that we've actually, within the years from 2023 where we started and 2026, we will have processed 200 gigawatts of new interconnection projects. We currently have 63 gigawatts of projects that have either received or have been offered an interconnection agreement. And what that means is there's 63 gigawatts of generation that's sitting out there that can come online unconstrained by the PJM interconnection queue. So a lot of those facts and figures seem to be omitted from the criticism of the interconnection queue. The chance to bring on new natural gas, for example, higher accredited resources, it's a challenge. It's a challenge because some state policies still remain restrictive. It's a challenge because, in a sense, some of our ability to build those things quickly atrophied over the period of time before the data centers became such a prominent part of the calculus of our industry. We need to be able to build out turbines. GE Vernova and others are and will continue to increase their production availability, but those are bottlenecks. There is a huge bottleneck in transmission infrastructure, substation infrastructure. That is something that's creating long delays in interconnection. But to the extent that states can implement policies that are supportive of high accreditation value resources coming online, states can help work with local permitting and siting, and continue to work with PJM on some of the things that we're trying to do, which include acceleration of state-sponsored high accreditation value resources coming online even faster than what we hope will be a fast and streamlined interconnection process. Hopefully we can bring on all resources. And I do want to say, at this point in time, PJM needs all resources. We need wind, we need solar, we need nuclear, we need uprates, we need coal, we need natural gas. We cannot meet this moment without all resources. But from a capacity basis, we need resources with high accreditation values. Thank you.
Delegate Grammer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for Mr. Bennett, and we appreciate you being here today. So in a recent request for a Maryland waiver, PJM wrote, quote, "There is an imminent electric reliability emergency. This could or would impact the entire Baltimore region." And you wrote, quote, "It could impact residences, hospitals, military facilities, water treatment plants, and other facilities." Governor Westmore has blamed you for this. Energy planning is about what we have now and what we'll have in the future. And the reality of what we're experiencing in Maryland is we are shuttering our baseload energy capacity currently at shocking rates. And we are moving towards energy mandates that require us to find energy supplies that don't exist and leave Maryland dependent on states like Pennsylvania. There are certainly things PJM could do better, I think, but I don't think you're responsible for either one of those things. So if we allow governors like Shapiro and Moore to shift blame to you, I don't think we're ever going to see a fix for this problem. I think if we actually want affordability and reliability for the region, and the young lady said a term that I like a lot, energy realism, we're going to need energy realism, we're going to need the truth, and we're going to need accountability. So if we have an all-hands-on-deck truth scenario, we're going to need PJM to be part of that. One final statement. Yesterday, driving up here, I took a call from a constituent. Her name was Carolyn. And she told me the story about how she had to make a decision at this point. Was it health care or energy bills or food or property taxes? How am I going to tell her Maryland still sees the value in PJM if we are allowing such bold-faced lies to control the entire narrative? And when can we count on PJM to do their part to say, no, what's really happening is governors like Shapiro and Moore are making it impossible to deliver energy?
The first thing I'd like to say, especially to your constituent, and for what it's worth, both my mother and father, who are on fixed incomes, live in Maryland. PJM's mission is reliability of the bulk power system in a cost-effective rate. Right now, the term and the concern around affordability is very high, and necessarily. The challenge for PJM on affordability is a bit of a relative term. What's affordable to me might not be affordable to Carol. What's affordable to others might not, be affordable to me. So what the best that PJM can do is, I don't want to say the best, what PJM is doing is trying to display the empathy of the fact that we all live and work and our families live and work in this environment, one. Two, we are trying to work as collaboratively as possible with all of our state partners, whether you're a commissioner on a state regulatory commission, whether you're a legislator, whether you're a governor. The focus for us is not about blame, although we're willing to take criticism where it's certainly due, because like you said, we're not perfect. We've made some mistakes, and we're trying to make sure that we own up to those and learn from them and move on from them. We'll take the criticism, but again, we would like to elevate to a place of solution focus. Define the problem, not the blame. Define the solution. Implement the solution. Focus on the fact that we need to keep the lights on. We need to meet the moment from an artificial intelligence perspective, but we need to do it in a way that we're not leaving average, I don't want to say average people behind. There's a lot of things that we can do, and there's a lot of things that the states can do. The data centers are an important economic development resource for all of our states. We need to find a balance there. These are in many cases, these are very well capitalized companies, some of the biggest companies in the world. There's a certain amount that they can probably bring to the table to help indemnify residential customers from the cost it's going to take to bring them online. Again, balance. I'm not talking about creating disincentives, because we need data center development. But there is some balance. Rate design, default service procurements that go out farther into the future to try to help hedge volatility. There's a slide in the deck, which you probably haven't had an opportunity to read. It's at the very end, and it talks about a lot of the things that PJM can do in concert with, in collaboration with our states, to try to address some of the affordability issues. We're aware of it, we're working very hard, and we look forward to input from all of you, our governors and our commissioners, on how to do better.
Thank you. Chairwoman White.
Thank you very much, Chairman. So I'd like to start off by talking about how U.S. Senator McCormick had this incredible AI Energy Summit out in Western Pennsylvania, and while I wish it was in Philadelphia, what took place in Philadelphia instead was our governor, calling other governors that are part of PJM into a room to talk about, the energy crisis in a way that I kind of agree that it wasn't as productive as I thought it could be. But I do want to talk about the fact that $94 billion worth of investment out of Western PA in this industry, in this sector, is going to demand a lot on our grid. But Texas is building a $500 billion data center called Stargate, and that's just one. So it speaks to the volume of demand that is out there in the multi-trillions of dollars, and the fact that here in Pennsylvania, our entire, effort to draw people here only resulted in $94 billion in total, let alone one project being $500 billion down in Texas. So obviously this AI race is extremely important for national security and economic development right here in our region and for all the states that are here today. Could you please speak to some of the changes that have been taking place at PJM, Stephen, in terms of the queue and some of the ways in which you've been able to improve things? And also, the other piece that I'd like to ask real quick is how the accurate load forecasting is affecting our ability to really signal to generators to build generation. If you could speak to those, I'd really appreciate it. And anybody else who might be able to add to either of those. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So as I indicated previously, we recognize that our interconnection queue, and that's the process by which we study generators that are seeking interconnection to the grid to make sure that their interconnection does not create reliability issues. And if there are upgrades necessary, the cost allocation for those upgrades goes to the generator project itself. So rather than charge customers on a socialized basis, the but-for cost of the generator interconnection is allocated to the generator or the developer. So we've done a number of things. So again, with the PJM, what we did with our stakeholders and with FERC is we came up with a mechanism to work through the 200 gigawatt backlog as quickly as possible, which again, we've been very successful. We're now at a point where, again, 67 gigawatts have moved through and have interconnection agreements. We have about 47 gigawatts left to go. That will be completed by early next year. The process that will follow will be our new process, so that's kind of a transition through the backlog. Then we will get into a new process. We're doing many things. Instead of studying projects based on when they entered the queue, we're studying projects based on their readiness. So it doesn't matter when you get in line, it matters when you're ready to come online. We're doing cluster studies instead of serial studies. One of the things that was very problematic for our queue was that if we studied a project and then they subsequently dropped out, we'd have to study every project that we had studied in the interim period. Now we're doing cluster-based studies. If you drop out, it's fine. We keep moving. We are working, kind of ironically, with AI to try to improve our process and make it faster. So we're working with Google to try to make it faster. And we hope to get down to a 1 to 1.5 year process with AI, and maybe even faster if possible. And we're giving more tools to our developers to be able to pick better places to interconnect. I definitely want to give my panelists an opportunity to respond as well, but you mentioned load forecast, and I do want to speak to load forecast. Load forecasting is the basis for almost everything that PJM does. It is the basis for almost every cost incurred within PJM. Load forecasting drives transmission planning and what we build from a transmission perspective. It builds the demand curve for our capacity market, which has been a source of affordability issues for so many over the last year and a half. And the thing is we know that the load forecasts are not right. By definition, they're not going to be right. But the amplitude of the large load additions and the hyperscalers has made the uncertainty around those load forecasts that much more of a contributing factor to the potential costs that our customers are facing. PJM receives the basis for our load forecast from our utilities. The utilities have jurisdictional authority over signing contracts with the large loads and the hyperscalers. So it makes sense that they provide that data. What we need to make sure is that data is as free from duplication as possible, as standardized as possible. We need discipline and accountability for those load forecasts. We don't have the authority to enforce that, although DOE and FERC are talking about potentially giving us that authority, but it is a place that we can work with the states to come up with much more precise and accurate load forecasts going forward.
Thank you. I want to mention we've been joined by Representative Joe Hogan. We have about 25 minutes left and a lot of questions left. So we're going to get through as many as we can, keep those questions short, keep those answers sweet, and we're going to get through what we can get through. Delegate Naraki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it. So I've got like a two-part question because I wanted to get some other folks involved in the conversation here. So I sit on the Environment and Transportation Committee in Maryland, which is frankly one of the committees that is pushing some of this radical policy agenda, frankly, that's not only impacting our state, but the entire grid. Currently, we import about 40% of our power in Maryland. Estimates say somewhere maybe 70% if we shut down the Brandon Shores and Wagner plants. Totally unsustainable. Thank you, Pennsylvania, though, for sending that power to us, but it's a totally unsustainable model, and it could get worse. So we have a radical governor, Governor Moore, sitting in the governor's mansion, who has proposed the idea of eliminating all natural gas in Maryland, not only for generation, but also for consumer choice, all natural gas appliances and things like that. Right? So my first question would be to anyone on the panel, and I'll do the other one as well, so I just throw it to you guys. First question is that, what does that look like to the grid if we eliminate all natural gas? We know that that's completely unsustainable. I would suspect that there would be 80 to 90% would be having to be imported then at that point. And what does that look like to consumer choice as well for appliances and things like that? Second question, on my committee, we have just radical ideas of a war on coal that is just not founded in any sort of reality whatsoever. We constantly have the idea come through my committee of eliminating the ability to ship coal out of the Port of Baltimore. The Port of Baltimore is one of the largest coal piers in the country. What would that do to the region, to the economy, to the global economy, if we eliminate the ability to ship coal out of the Port of Baltimore as well? So I'll throw it over to the panel, and I'm sure that kind of covers everybody there probably on the panel.
Well, first I will say that although I am a coal advocate, I do hate cooking with electricity. I prefer natural gas. Main point. I won't speak for the natural gas space, but I am very familiar with the Port of Baltimore. Given, some of the premature retirements in the coal power space, a lot of our companies have really pivoted to the export market. So we do export a lot of coal globally. Primarily for bricklaying and cement making, but also for steel making. So a lot of folks think that coal just is used in thermal properties for power generation, but Pennsylvania is also blessed with a lot of very valuable metallurgical coal that is used for steel making. I think, if we just look at, and Rob used to work with a consulting firm that is very familiar with the coal markets too. If we look at last spring when a ship ran into a bridge in Baltimore and kind of stalled all of our exports for several weeks, it had a pretty significant impact on our production. And a lot of our production is train dependent. So I don't know if it's the same committee that you sit on, but I'm very familiar with the bill that I'm pretty sure is a violation of interstate commerce, but that wanted to tax all trains that have coal in them that go across Maryland. We do use significant train lines in Maryland that come from southwestern Pennsylvania and go to the Port of Baltimore. So it would take a significant hit probably on our production. That said, production can always go elsewhere. There's other ports. It just might take a little bit longer to get there. But we do export a significant amount out of Baltimore.
Yeah, I'll address the natural gas question. One of the things we often say at API is that natural gas is a Swiss Army knife because it can do just about anything: power generation, cooking, heating, manufacturing, fertilizer. So the notion that you would purposely remove that from your energy mix is unimaginable. I think it's never been clearer than it is right now that we need more baseload power, and we also need flexible power. So not only is natural gas a Swiss Army knife across sectors, but even within the power sector, it can play both of those roles. So the notion that we would stop building, not only would we stop building gas plants, which Maryland and New Jersey generally have done over the past several years to the detriment of reliability and consumers, the idea that we would shut down gas plants, several of which in Maryland are very new and some of the most efficient and lowest emitting plants in the country, doesn't pass the smell test. So I certainly hope that we can help you push back against that policy.
And just really quickly, coming from the consumer angle, we don't have any studies of Maryland specifically, but Consumer Energy Alliance does have a study coming out of Illinois to put the dollars and cents to what cost it would give to consumers. And I'm happy to give you that report. It would be very helpful because it is very costly to consumers.
I'm just going to give you one stat that maybe some other members of your committee might be interested in. Between 2018 and 2023, Pennsylvania reduced 9 million metric tons of carbon emissions. Why? Natural gas. That's it.
Delegate Fisher.
Would help, wouldn't it? Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the people of Pennsylvania for saving Maryland from the policy consequences of the majority party. I'm on the utility subcommittee in Maryland, have been for a while, and I'm fortunate enough to represent a county that has not only a liquefaction natural gas export plant, but also a nuclear power plant. As you can imagine, we get lots of inquiries from data centers, not a shocker because of what's there. But what I heard today from some of the testimony from you folks, which is interesting because we hear it in Annapolis too, is all of the above approach. And a lot of times that's a dog whistle in Annapolis for solar and wind. And I'm just really curious, given the power needs that we must have for baseload power, what role do solar and wind play in saving our grid from collapse? What role do those two things play?
What the perfect mix is, the market does, and so we would just point back to first principles. Let them all compete on an even playing field, and you'll find out how much solar and wind can actually compete in Maryland, in Pennsylvania, all across PJM. The other thing that is going on, we're all very aware of right now, there's messaging that clean energy support is being reduced, and that's what's driving energy costs up. We all know that's not true, and I think it's really important that we push back on that and talk about how these energy sources have been subsidized for a very, very long time, and they consistently are not able to compete on their own merits. So, a lot of this conversation today, I think, is about taking back the narrative and helping consumers understand where the costs are actually coming from.
Just to add to that, every electron matters. I know that we talked about that with a couple of panelists up here, where it makes sense and it can be supplemental. Sometimes solar, et cetera, can drive down costs. So we truly are at Consumer Energy Alliance, all of the above. Where we definitely see the reliability issues coming from that firm power source being taken offline. So I want to be very clear there.
But can I ask, I'm sorry, but
No.
I guess my issue is we were always told in Annapolis for 25 years that solar was going to be for rooftops. It was going to provide power for homes and for businesses and beyond rooftops. And then suddenly, your organization comes to Annapolis, and I know you do as well, and we hear things like, well, no, solar is going to provide baseload power. Let's cover up every farm on the eastern shore of Maryland. And so I'm hoping that you can clarify this for me, because I don't think it's true that we can provide baseload with solar that we need without actually ruining the environment. Can you just clarify that?
So I don't think CEA is called solar baseload before. Typically, when we talk about that baseload, we're talking about those firm generation. Where we can see solar supplementing and where it can cause and drive down costs is where we see its benefit. And happy to talk offline. I'm not certain where that came to be.
I think one thing from a PJM perspective, you've heard me on a number of occasions this morning talk about the 67 gigawatts of generation interconnection projects that have either signed or offered interconnection agreements. The vast majority of those projects are solar. When we look at our queue, both at PJM-wide and in many of our individual states, the largest contributing technology in our interconnection queue is solar. So again, at this moment, facing the load increases that we're seeing, we need that solar to come online. We need the solar to interconnect. Right now, the fastest available resource for interconnection are the ones that have the interconnection agreement, and those are primarily solar. We need them. From a capacity perspective, the accreditation value for solar without battery hybridization is relatively low. With battery hybridization, it actually increases significantly. Unfortunately, batteries right now are costly, but they are an elegant solution to the intermittency of solar. But to get those resources on from an energy perspective, there is value, and we need it to happen. But we need it to happen not as an or, we need it to happen as an and, with resources that have high accreditation values as well.
Thank you. Representative Eric Nelson, our Deputy Policy Chairman of Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome to Pennsylvania, from our neighboring states. I really appreciate the information that has been shared during the hearing. And Mrs. Milam, your energy realism term, I think, is a key theme for the day. Some of what we've learned during earlier policy hearings, that this new term for me this session has been demand response and demand response incidents. I kind of question the PJM statements of the grid is going to continue to be reliable, because can we start with the number of increases in demand response, which for those who aren't familiar with the term, that's when our hospitals, our manufacturers are provided very short notice that they have to go offline and generate their own power, oftentimes not being reimbursed for the power that they're generating. And if we can, from a consumer protection perspective, the cost on businesses to have to be able to self-generate in an instant. If we could start with increases in demand response, which I think is a true reflection of grid unreliability, and then what that impact is having on our businesses. I think even now, smart refrigerators that are tied into Bluetooth go offline during demand response incidents. We just got a fridge. I was reading that app, and so it's happening far more than I think what everybody is realizing.
Let me start maybe with kind of a conceptual answer and then a specific answer around demand response. From a grid reliability perspective, I think PJM and everyone focused on this. There's a balance that we need to approach grid reliability with, and the state of grid reliability where we are right now. We have become more dependent on demand response. You are 100% correct. That in and of itself is not necessarily a red flag. A demand response is and has been an effective resource for PJM for a number of years. I do not want my statements here to either overstate the reliability risk that we face in the near term, but I also do not want it to understate the potential risk that we face if we don't have a course correction on the trends that we're seeing. We identified them in 2023, and they continue to be daunting from a challenge perspective. So we do need to fix some of these problems. We need to get our hands around some of these trends and challenges, or the grid may become unreliable. From a demand response perspective, it is definitely going to be a part of the solution going forward. Elasticity of demand in a market is a good thing. Being able to react to price signals, being able to turn off when it makes financial sense, that's actually a very good thing. However, we shouldn't expect residential customers, small businesses, to bear the brunt of that. So one of the big questions in the industry right now is, how flexible can data centers be? I think the answer depends on what kind of data center you are, what you're operating, what your SOP is. But looking to find flexibility in some of these very, very large loads, whether it be through backup generation or batteries in the kind of between the data center and the meter, or some combination thereof, I think has to be part of the solution. Because if we're going to bring these data centers online as fast as Silicon Valley wants and needs that to happen, then every solution needs to be on the table, and load flexibility is going to be one of those solutions.
Again, Mr. Bennett, before we shift to the impact of demand response, could you please clarify the increase in demand response incidents over these last few years?
So I don't have the details. I will, again, agree with you that they have increased this past, and in fact, one of the things that you'll see, you saw with so every summer and winter we do a preparedness presentation talking about what it's going to take to keep the lights on through the peak periods. And in our last summer preparedness discussion, we really emphasized that without demand response and an increase in demand response, we would potentially face reliability challenges. So they have definitely increased. I can get you the details afterwards. Unfortunately, I don't have the data in front of me right now, and I apologize for that.
Just very quickly, I don't have hard numbers, but any day a business can't open its doors is a bad day for the business. You know, I also just realized that you had a fancier fridge than me, so good to know.
Thank you. I want to point out we have been joined by Representative Zimmerman and Representative Valerie Gatos. Delegate Zalega.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for being here. We are here focused on restoring energy affordability and reliability, and we are here because every month when our constituents open their gas and electric bill, it is shock and awe. It has gone up by hundreds of dollars a month. You know, this is thousands of extra dollars that our constituents cannot afford. So, you know we need it to be affordable. We know it needs to be reliable. I'd like Rob and Rachel to talk to us in a free market system where we have removed all the incentives for wind and solar. Tell us how you compete against wind and solar with reliability and affordability.
API is a free market organization. We're also an all of the above organization, but I think it's become abundantly clear that natural gas has reliability characteristics that no other fuel has. Again, we make the Swiss Army knife analogy all the time. And again, it's never been more clear that we need baseload power right now. And we think gas is the best fuel to bring incremental power generation onto the grid. At the same time, we're also blessed here in Pennsylvania with what we call an energy bounty. We are so fortunate to have this natural gas under our feet. Not only is it abundant, but it's very, very affordable. And I think there's nothing more that the producers of gas in Pennsylvania would love than to be able to share that gas with states like New Jersey, like New York, like Pennsylvania, like Maryland, and even others up and down the East Coast. And in order to bring that gas to those other states, we need comprehensive permitting reform both at the state and federal level, so we can build the pipelines needed both intrastate and interstate. And I'll give you a data point of just how bad it's gotten. The last big interstate pipeline to get built out of the Marcellus Shale Basin was the Mountain Valley Pipeline. It took 10 years from its first FERC application to when it first started flowing gas. That is longer than it took us to stand up the Apollo space program and put a man on the moon in the 1960s. So that's how bad it's gotten for us to build infrastructure in this country. In order to deliver the reliable and affordable energy that Americans need, we've got to be able to fix those processes.
Thank you. Assemblyman Myers.
Thank you. And my question is really for anybody that can answer it. So I hear a lot about all of the above, which is nice. However, where we are in New Jersey, we are the most densely populated state. So some of these things really are not options for us. My district has the Oyster Creek nuclear power generating station, which was decommissioned in 2017. Prior to that, it was the oldest continuously operated nuclear power plant in the country, providing between 650 megawatts to the grid. So you still have all that infrastructure in place there. I've met with the owners of the facility. They are looking at putting small modular reactors in place there. I like what I hear about natural gas. However, that's not really an option in New Jersey either, due to pipelines being blocked, certainly going out to the coast. I don't think coal is going to come back to New Jersey anytime soon, but that's possible. So with all that being said, our governor bet the future of energy in the state on offshore wind, which has crashed and burned. We are committed as a caucus to defeating offshore wind, and we're also committed to bringing nuclear back to the state. So what would your recommendations be for streamlining that process? What would the best policy prescription be? Anyone?
Again, it's always a challenge to find policies that are both achievable and transformative. We all work in the world of what is possible. But I think one thing I'm beginning to see as a shift is, we've been talking about permitting reform. Let's make it easier to build things for, in Pennsylvania, forever. But, I think we need to move beyond just how to make the process easier to let's actually reduce the number of regulations. And our friends at Virginia have done a really good job with this. And they have a very professional process where they go through and they just analyze, where is the duplication? Where are things outdated? AI can be a fantastic tool for this and make it a lot easier and a lot faster. Just clean up the books. So that doesn't get exactly to your question about what kind of generation, but I think that is key to creating the environment for more generation, if you can speed up that process. And so moving away from just how do we make it easier to let's just get rid of some of the red tape, I think is really important and something we need to drive forward.
Delegate Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm the closer. So, Mr. Bennett, I really appreciate you being here, and we really do appreciate the work of PJM. You are in a room full of people who understand your value and appreciate the work that you guys do at a time when you are being consistently thrown under the bus in our state and in other places. That being said, please help us help you. Could you go through the list of each form of energy and tell us what the accreditation value actually is for each form of energy?
I don't think I actually can do every, well, actually, first, thank you for your kind words. I really do appreciate that. It is a bit rare. You may not have heard that online, but comment was made that it was rare, and it is a bit. And so I really do appreciate that, because I can tell you the people that I work with shoulder to shoulder are everything we do is about trying to keep the lights on. That's it. That is our only agenda every day. We truly are fuel neutral. We are fuel agnostic. If you came to me with a brand new fuel that would keep the lights on, we'd take it. So I can give you some of the accreditation values. I can certainly provide the accreditation values in a list for everybody, from all the states. Nuclear is 95%. I think fixed solar is 8%. I think tracking solar is 11. Natural gas, depending on whether it's a CT or a CC, can be anywhere from in the 60s up to the 70s and 80s. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Those are the ones that kind of stand out to me. But like I said, I'm happy to get you a list. They do change year to year.
That's very helpful.
So I'll give you the latest that we have, and then I'll make sure that my colleague that represents Maryland will keep you updated as they change over time as well.
That's very helpful. And also, you had mentioned the batteries increase solar. Do you have that number by any chance?
Yeah, so batteries increase accreditation with duration. So the longer, so right now, I think the preponderance of batteries that are commercially available tend to be around a 4-hour duration. And I hesitate, and I probably shouldn't even guess. I want to say that a 4-hour battery jumps into the 50 to 60% range. As you move up the duration scale into the 6, 8, and 10 hour batteries, which again are not common, you can get into accreditations that rival natural gas and coal.
Okay.
And then when you combine those with solar, that can be a very elegant solution to the intermittency of the renewables.
Okay.
Again, batteries right now tend to be
rare.
And price challenged.
So our queue is basically massively bloated with 8% accreditation product. That's what you're telling me?
There's a lot of, I don't know the mix between fixed tilt and tracking solar, but it would be generally probably below 15%. Again, energy contributors, but capacity challenged.
Thank you. Chairman Struzzi for the last and quickest question ever.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, I appreciate all of you being here today. I think we've heard some great testimony, and really, it's a problem that's been building for many years now, and it's something that we cannot afford to delay any longer in addressing. So with that said, to wrap things up, I think if there was one thing we could do today to reverse this trend, and any of you can answer this question, one thing we can do as policymakers, multi-state policymakers, what would that be? Or a couple of things.
Make sure all policy prioritizes affordability and reliability. Dead stop.
I would echo that. I would also say, and I agree with the panel that an all of the above approach is always smart for the grid. Anybody that can provide reliable, affordable energy should be able to be on the queue and in the grid. However, I find it very curious that most of what's in the queue is solar. And why is that? Why is that? And it's because of policies like renewable energy credits and AEPS that have subsidized those kind of resources that make the playing field unlevel. I did want to briefly mention, because there's a report that came out last week from Berkeley that pointed to RECs, which not all utilities actually produce the renewable energy. They have to buy the credits to comply, which is just an increase to cost, actually increase electric bills. So those kind of policies, RGGI, I've been talking about RGGI since 2019. I'm exhausted by it, but obviously that's that's not a great policy. Back to the sign over there, Pacer Press, anything that encourages one source over another in the market, I think is irresponsible.
There is a slide where we have some policy recommendations. I think the main one for us is please do not promulgate policies that remove generation before the replacement is actually online and available. So, understanding that generation will retire, but we need to make sure the replacement's there before it does. The last thing I'll say, and I want to go back to the load forecast. London Economics said that the load forecast in North America would represent 90% of all chipsets produced around the world. So we know that the load forecast for data centers in North America is probably high. It's unlikely that North America will absorb 90% of all of the chipsets developed in the globe, across the globe. So whatever we can do to make sure that we get those load forecasts right, because when we do, we'll make sure that what customers pay is accurate, and those that want to invest in infrastructure, whether it be pipelines or coal or natural gas or anything else, will know what they're faced from a demand perspective, and those investments will likely be better and more cost-effective as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblyman Knitra.
Thank you very much, Chairman. A real brief comment from Ms. Gleason. I wouldn't be sitting here today if my great-grandfather didn't leave Slovakia to move over and work in the Vesta coal mine number 4 out in Pennsylvania. My grandfather worked there. My great-uncle worked there as well. And I think the average person in states like New Jersey and Maryland don't understand the shell game that is being perpetrated by our governors and our state legislatures, because they shut down all the coal plants in New Jersey and they tout themselves as green energy champions. But what they don't talk about is, on the other side of the equation, our growing importation of energy comes from places like Pennsylvania, and your industry is the one that bails us out continually, time and time again, while we get to sit here in New Jersey and pretend that we're green warriors, but we're just buying, quote-unquote, dirty fossil fuels from just across the state border. So I want to thank you. I want to thank your members. I want to thank your member companies for everything that you're doing for helping our states keep the lights on. And to you, Mr. Bennett, I want to commend you somewhat for managing to stay objective during this hearing, despite all of the attacks that I know our governor and our state legislature have pushed on you. And I wanted to highlight something, because it was March of this year where the Democrats in New Jersey realized that the gig was up, right? They realized that all their policies over the past 8 years, chickens were finally coming home to roost, and they realized we had an energy crisis on their hands. So what was the first thing that they did in New Jersey? They quietly drafted this internal memo, and what was one of the top things on this internal memo? It was, let's shift the blame and let's blame PJM for all of our failings, right? So I have a copy of that here today, and everybody knows that, and you know that as well. I had a bunch of artful questions for you, but I really just want to close this hearing by giving you the opportunity to tell us, why is that foolhardy of the Democrats in the state of New Jersey? What have they gotten wrong? And as succinctly as you can say, this is your opportunity to not fence sit here and tell us, what do they have wrong? Thank you.
I'm going to disappoint you, because PJM, and there's going to be people that I know that are listening that will laugh at this. We are on occasion professional fence sitters. I will reiterate this. I don't know that this is the time for blame. Criticism.
But you are getting blamed.
We are. We are getting blamed. And there are things that we can control and things that we can't. Criticism that is constructive, that we can learn from, that create better solutions, absolutely, every day, all day, 100%. But what I'd like to see, so there was a time in America where we put an astronaut on the moon. There was a time in America where we came together as a country and we helped win 2 world wars. I would say, and I don't want to be hyperbolic, but I would say the AI space that we find ourselves in is similar to those moments. So rather than cast blame, let's come together as a country, right, left, fossil, renewable, it doesn't matter. We need supply. We need to make sure that we can meet the demand.
I'm sorry, I know this isn't the format, but I just have to interrupt then. Let me ask you one question then.
Okay.
Okay? How many hours, because they like to talk about how PJM is inefficient with their studying of different energy sources, right? How many hours has PJM staff wasted studying offshore wind that will never, ever come online in New Jersey? Do you have that number at least? Do you know how many thousands of hours? I mean, when we had a hearing, I know it was something astronomical, and I feel like that was a foolhardy pursuit. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
I'm sorry to continue to disappoint you. I don't. However, I do have a colleague that's focused on New Jersey, and I'm happy to have him contact you and provide you with that information.
Thank you very much. Yes, and any other follow-up questions, feel free. I want to put a bow on this because we got to run down for our press conference. I just want to point out one of the things that was interesting. About 20 minutes ago, middle of this hearing, Governor Shapiro, or his social media intern, tweeted about Pennsylvania being an energy leader and how we're working hard to catch up. And he talked about his lightning plan, which is just, as you see over there, whether it's Reggie, whether it's Pacer, whether it's Press, there's always some new fancy name, but at the end of the day, it just means higher costs. And all of those costs are passed on to the consumers. And specifically, the Lightning Plan is estimated over the next 10 years to cost Pennsylvania ratepayers $157 billion in new energy costs. So if we want to talk about getting energy costs down, Governor, I'm glad you are watching. Work with us. Let's talk about this. Let's get rid of Reggie. Let's pursue new generation. Let's get costs down and keep energy reliable for citizens of all of our states. So I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you from our delegates from Maryland and New Jersey, our delegate Webert from signing on from Virginia. I want to give a couple of big shout outs. First of all of this was the brainchild of our Vice Chairwoman Marcel. Thank you very much for your idea to put all this together. I want to thank the Capitol staff. Pulling this room together was a huge deal, and obviously the policy committee team did 99% of the work. All I did was show up, so I want to thank them for doing this. I want to just some closing remarks. The Mid-Atlantic strength has always come from cooperation, not just competition. And so we are working together here, delegates from every state in this room, to protect families, businesses, and workers who rely on our shared grid every day. So today, hopefully, is more than just a symbolic discussion. It's the start of real action to restore reliability, affordability, and common sense to the energy policy in our region. Immediately following this hearing, we're going straight down to the Capitol Media Center for a press conference, so all of the members attending, we would love if you could join us. We're going to go out this door and down. For press, I know that some folks wanted to talk to members. We would ask that you wait to do that at or after the press conference, as we are on a bit of a time crunch. So thank you all very much for joining us. Please follow us down to the Capitol Media Center. This hearing is adjourned.